This video is brought to you by the No Fear community.
Now, in his book, No Fear, Sandra Pekka talks about the fact that barriers between races and cultures have come down quickly, actually, overnight, with the rise of the internet and technology, and that digital cowboys are exposed to and even connected with others from around the world from a very early age. Now, how has this impacted the workplace, and how has your role as a chief HR executive in charge of diversity changed?
Well, there's some truth to the fact that there's some barriers that have been broken down as a result of the age of technology. Similar to music, music has really broken down a lot of the racial barriers that have existed. However, the workplace dynamic often brings in another dimension of relationships. In other words, the workplace allows for face-to-face, real-time interactions that, in my opinion, give rise to some of the same traditional conflicts, communications challenges, such as competition, office politics, and I think that they still remain, even though there, again, have been some aspects of relationships that have been impacted by technology. For example, I work in the public sector, and I find that the workplace politics often become the drivers for relationships as opposed to technology.
Interesting.
So survival, such as, let's just paint an idea, if there's a changing environment or an environment that may be downsized or layoffs may happen, the drivers become fear.
Interesting.
But not necessarily, and that the reaction to that is the same traditional reaction that we've realized over the years. And sometimes it plays out in ways that revert back to differences. Sometimes racial.
Yep.
Sometimes gender.
So you're saying
sometimes generational.
You're saying plus les change, plus les mêmes choses. The more change, the more things are the same. So some things are still issues, even with the new generation, the new technology.
Well, I think I'm saying something similar to that, but I'm saying that in the virtual arena, some of the dimensions of relationships may not be as evident.
Yep. Because
it is simply virtual.
Yep.
But in real-time, face-to-face interactions, human nature comes into play.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. So, Dr. Buford, No Fear also speaks about the new ways to lead the so-called digital cowboys, as Pekka terms them. And these are people, a new generation with different needs and demands than previous generations. So what do you have to do to attract, retain, and lead this young talent? And how do you help them integrate with the senior executives and vice versa? And is this different than a few years ago?
Well, I do believe that young talent, when we attempt to bring them into the organization, once they get into the organization, I believe they're more demanding of a balanced work environment. And I think that they're more inclined to exit or leave a workplace that doesn't deliver exactly what they want. However, the recession has really, and the lack of jobs that recession has brought, I believe, has had an impact on what even younger job candidates are willing to put up with.
Really?
And the public sector in particular tends to lag behind in many ways from other organizations because people stay longer.
Yep.
So first of all, you have less jobs, and second of all, you have the greatest challenge of it's going to be in the future, the exodus of retirees and the influx of younger workers converging.
Interesting.
So I think what you're going to find is that there's not nearly enough succession planning that's going on in organizations, and there may well be chaos as young leaders attempt to lead older workers.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that, because that's quite an interesting picture to think with chaos as younger leaders attempt to work with the older?
Well, my belief is that organizations need a specific balance of experience and innovation.
Right.
So, so I think about the fact that organizations need to ensure that they retain the wisdom, the decision making, the experience that they need, and they also need to be constantly bringing in a flux of innovation, creativity that the younger candidates will bring. So it's kind of like innovation meets experience.
Oh, nice. Innovation meets experience. Okay. So, as we mentioned, you have been in charge of HR for global companies, and now you're involved in the transportation and the public sector. So, talk to us about what globalization now means to you compared to, for example, when I knew you 9 years ago.
Well, you know, in some ways, it's the dynamics of globalization are the same for every organization, and that, believe it or not, globalization is very important to my industry, aviation and maritime, because in aviation it's relevant because, first of all, our customers are diverse, they're becoming more global, and also we're trying to expand business into global arenas such as China and Japan and Korea and many other places, South America, just as any other business is attempting to do. So from the perspective of growing business in the global arena, it's the same. With the perspective of satisfying global customers, it's the same.
Okay. Well, in closing, you've given us quite a few insights, but I was wondering if there was a particular burning topic in the area of global, of human resources on a global level, at the very senior level where you often have operated. If there are any issues that you would like to just mention that might not have been addressed or discussed enough that you think people should be paying attention to.
Well, I do think that the global arena requires specific skills. And that's when I say that I don't think it's changed that much, I think it's still true. And I don't think that we've mastered all those skills yet. And they vary from just learning about culture and how to do business in other countries, as well as really having the courage to go into another country and interact with individuals that are different from ourselves. And I also feel that there's a lot to learn about global business dynamics in terms of things such as the currency, the attitudes towards business and organizations, and the way that organizations are structured. And I think that it's going to take great humility for us as a country to actually admit that we can learn from our global partners.
This video is brought to you by the No Fear community.